Hi, and welcome to Hypothetically Intentional, where we ask the question, what if we set intentions with everything we do? I'm your host, Michelle Aubers, and we are in for part two with Michelle Green, the Paradox Witch today. Welcome back, Michelle.
Thank you for having
Yay.
me.
All right. Let's see. Intention. Do you want to drop one in?
Um, I think what would be cool is if I opened the Akashic Records for this group, and I'll do it in a way where I'll say the entire thing out loud. And so if you want to try opening your records, um, you can feel free to listen to the prayer. This is the prayer I use. It's from the Linda Howe book, is the prayer that I use to open the Akashic Records. So I'll do it for your audience of everybody who's
Perfect.
going to listen to this, and we'll see what information wants to come through.
I love
Yeah.
it. I'm in. Yep.
Okay. So the first half is typically, I mentioned this in the last episode, is a pillar of light. So even if you want to tune in as we're doing this, entering through the crown of the head, and then as I connect to the audience, it's heart to heart. And so we do acknowledge the forces of light, asking for guidance, direction, and courage to know the truth as it is revealed for our highest good and the highest good of all of those connected to us. O Holy Spirit, protect me from all forms of self-centeredness and direct my attention to the work at hand. Help me to know this audience in the light of the Akashic Records, to see this audience through the eyes of the Lords of the Records, and enable me to share the wisdom and compassion that the masters, teachers, and loved ones of this audience have for them. Help me to know this audience in the light of the Akashic Records, to see this audience through the eyes of the Lords of the Records, and enable me to share the wisdom and compassion that the masters, teachers, and loved ones of them have for them. Help me to know this audience in the light of the Akashic Records, to see this audience through the eyes of the Lords of the Records, and enable me to share the wisdom and compassion that the masters, teachers, and loved ones of them have for them. The records are now open. Okay, so that is the Akashic prayer that I use to open up for individual sessions, or if I'm doing a group session or a group healing. And then typically I'll just like tune in to the energy of the group, and then people can ask their questions. And then the end portion is like a healing, Akashic healing energy.
I feel like I just had a big old dragon sitting in front of me. Huh.
I have had a dragon guide come through during a session, so things get wild in the Akashic Records. I'll just say that. Like, things shift very quickly.
Yeah. So what would be the next step for our listeners? Like, I mean, do you get like an intention and some information already, or do you need to sit maybe a little bit more, or how
Let's
does it
do
work
it.
for you?
Yeah. What should we tune into or talk about during this session? I just want to share a little bit about Akashic energy work, where it comes from, and how people can work with it themselves, and also how within the Akashic Records there are still many access points and different lineages to access the same information. So let's go into it.
Do it.
Okay, so I get a lot of questions about like, what are the Akashic Records? Are they, like, what are they basically? And they are a dimensional, I want to say space, but it's like it's hard to put into words. It is a dimensional reality, and in this space, we'll call it, is the collective of timelines, both individual timelines, collective timelines, and all potentiality of timelines. And there are the masters of the Akashic Records that are the keepers of this information and sacred energy. And it is my belief that the humanity is an experiment, and this is going to get wild, but the Akashic masters feel very like what we would consider an alien, which is really just an interdimensional being, and that we are essentially, they are an aspect of the experiment as well, in so much that they are observing and overseeing this human experiment, this human experience. And it's essentially as a way for souls to evolve through density and through duality. And so it's like both very human and also a broader perspective with the kind of information that comes through. Sometimes information is blocked from coming through for various reasons. We're not meant to know everything. If you've read the Bhagavad Gita, at the battlefield with Arjuna meets with Krishna, and Krishna gives him God's sight, and he's just like, "Oh, this is too much. This is too much." And it's like, we're not really meant to see it all and know it all. And I think that is such a misconception of psychics and psychic works, is we all have this one line, this one connection to source energy and source healing. And it looks and feels different for every single one of us who have that connection, which is really all of us, but who have it activated and have a relationship with that psychic connection. And so through that, there are things, we're not meant to know. And then in the context of future questions, there are obviously many timelines that can coexist at the same time. And how I perceive that is that there are certain timelines that to me seem highlighted in color, like it activated. And those are the timelines that are either our highest timelines or are the most probable timeline to happen. And there are ways to shift timelines. And they're within the energy work that the Akashic Masters do. There are ways that we either choose to integrate or revert back to an old timeline. And so there's always choice involved. That's a little bit about the Akashic Records. Some people see it as a library, where you're like, enter the library and like read a book. And it's a really great beginner tool to have visualization. I think it's a really helpful tool for anybody to develop the art of visualization. And it does help kind of sort through the mind. But it's not a library as we perceive it. It to me is more like a matrix, an AI matrix, an interdimensional like light codes. And then they're also overseeing collective timelines, and I have received the information through these beings that I worked with within the Akashic Records that revealed themselves to me, that they work with tying broken timelines. And broken timelines are essentially where there is like an end to the experiment, or where there is like any mass events of suffering that like break our timeline, and that they're able to like tie those broken timelines with new potentials. That's a little bit about the Akashic Records. Where do you want to go next with that?
Oh gosh. You say timelines. I feel like it's just like you just described how I do tarot readings, in that I don't super love yes, no questions. because I think there's endless possibilities. And I think we
Mhm.
as humans can't see all the way out, but like divine can. And so, we get to be a little more generic but precise in our questions. And then that can take us somewhere that actually gives us information.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's interesting you say that because in the beginning, I didn't really do a lot of yes no questions. And at this point in my readings, I'm like, give it to me. Any question that's not about another person and what they're thinking, feeling, or going to
yeah.
do. But like, I always approach it from this perspective of like, even, I've gotten a lot of questions of like, will I get pregnant? And I'm like, I never promise an answer. I'm like, I'm just going to tune in and see. Let me see what information I get. Um, and sometimes they are so precise and
Yeah.
they give me a date, a month of when that is expected. And even in one case, they said, this is what you need to do to get pregnant. And I see it happening in this month. And then I got heard back from my friend and she was like, yeah, it happened exactly as you said. But sometimes they will be precise and give specific information and even months. And it's like, you have to wonder like why that happens sometimes. Like some people are allowed specific information and some people it's like totally blocked. And I just totally trust that if it's not coming through, it's not meant to.
100%. And that was my point. It's like
Yeah.
we might get information, but if you go in with only wanting a yes, no,
Yeah.
that just feels a little restrictive. So I don't know. I just like the way I work with tarot is less about future predicting and more about like, let's just see what information is there
Yeah.
and then we can go from there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with the Akashic records and like I've done Akashic readings for myself. I've never done it from the perspective of the collective.
Mm.
So, and you opened for the listeners. Like
Mhm.
I feel like you explaining the Akashic records was an important piece of what you got. But also, is there something specific to, I'm wondering if there's something specific to the three cards. We never talked about the three cards last week, but you pulled three cards that you mentioned. And I'm just wondering if those three cards are maybe somehow connected to a message within Akashic Records that can offer some information.
Yeah. I'm just trying to pull up. Um, So I got the Five of Cups, and I haven't looked all of these up, but I think, grief and disappointment. The Tower, these all jumped out, by the way. I was like, let's just see. The Tower, and then the Five of Pentacles. So
Also, fives is a lot of
two fives.
confusion.
Yeah.
Confusion and conflict and just like feelings of, yeah, frustration. Like fives are never easy.
And what's interesting, and so yesterday I was sitting in a plant medicine ceremony and I drew a card from the same deck and it was the Five of Wands. And I was like, oh, let's just not, okay, I'm just gonna put that there and then ask for another card for clarification. And it was the High Priestess. And as we sat in ceremony and we were just like talking, and it was just like, no, this is what's needed is we need more of us to hold space for the collective and to really set in this new paradigm. We cannot shy away from the pain and the suffering that is in the world. Like it is there and it is serving a purpose for us to be with it and alchemize it and to know that it's just a part of our human experience. And there is another way that we get to exist in the world, and shying away from fear and pain and grief is never going to serve us. And so I just feel like this is such an important message, especially for anyone who calls themselves a healer. I just thought it was so funny that that was my immediate reaction of like, that's not what I want to deal with during this medicine journey. Um,
Yeah.
and it just was such a beautiful lesson in how it was integrated and in what came up in our conversations along the way. So let me just tune in to see if there's anything else that they want to say in regards to that. in this time of great pain and sorrow and anger and resentment and disconnection, it's more important than ever that we individually and collectively hold space for our darker aspects in order for them to be integrated. And in that integration process, there is healing and a third process that can be born from the combination of light and dark, suffering and peace. There is a third practice, and it is your power. And it's time for your power to begin to awaken through this integration. And we know it's hard for many of you to face that which you do not desire to face. There are so many aspects of pain that feel too deep to process. And to you, we say, find your communities that can hold you and support you and see you and love you. And know that if you feel alone in this, you can call forward our help to bring the right people into your life that are going to support you and see you. It's imperative that at this time we start seeing each other as whole integrated beings, honoring and accepting the darkness within each other as well. And in that, we're able to see each other as holy beings. And in that, we're able to open up new portals to magic, connection, and a power that has been a part of your human DNA from the beginning of your existence, not just on Earth, but in other experiments as well.
Yeah, mic drop. That's a lot of we hinted at last week in our conversation.
Yeah.
I just keep hearing redefining words and their energy and what they mean, you know?
Yeah. And like what has really come through for me, and the deeper I go into the Akashic Records and the deeper I go into this work, the more concerned I am with the collective more than what I need from my work. I'm so much more concerned with what the world needs from me. And I know that, and I hosted a somatic spell casting workshop, and it was for individual and collective intentions. And so an aspect of that was in a reimagining of what could a world, like even if we couldn't get rid of polarity, like what would that look like truly in words, in specifics, in the right context, like what is that new world? And the first thing that every single person wrote down in their journal was community.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And return to community-based living, and the way that we relate to one another. And that just like makes so much sense with everything we've already talked about and covered, as like the most important thing we can do is recognize that we need each other. Even today, it's funny. I had a friend, and I know she meant something different, but it just triggered this memory within me. And it was, I never want to depend on anybody. And she meant in a certain way. And I was just like taken back to my 16, 17-year-old self, where I was like, I never want to depend on anybody financially or whatever. And I'm just like, oh, my sweet child, we just need each other. We need to depend on each other. We need each other for everything, whether it's like I had a situation out on my land that felt very scary to me. And not like terribly scary, just like energetically, I noticed I was in fear, because I have 5 acres out here and it's a forest in a ridge. And then a spiritual kind of thing happened that I was like, okay, this is really weird and freaky. And one of my friends is my massage therapist, and she's very intuitive. And she brought it up. And I was like, now that you mention it, yes, there is this thing going on. And she offered to come help me like clear my forest and communicate. And it ended up being that there was a spirit trapped here. And it was such a beautiful thing to have her come and offer her time and her resources and wisdom in a place where I felt out of my depth. Like I'm
Mhm.
spiritually connected, but I was out of my depth. And there's zero things wrong with that because we need each other, and each other's visions. And I think that is something that I feel called to help usher into the world. My next offering is going to be a psychic development, um, because what the world needs now is not answers, but more people saying, what do you think? What do you feel? And
Hmm.
to have more people be like, wait, nobody's even asked me that. And to tune in and start to receive their own answers and then to share that, with each other and with, random people who come in and get readings and collective, however it works out. But we need more people who start to believe in themselves.
Yeah, and that speaks back to we all have our own unique gifts and our own unique ways.
Yeah.
And I feel like connecting in communities, there's so many layers to how it can benefit us. Because I think about we all have our own gifts, we have our own unique ways, but put yourselves in a room, do an experience like you talked about, and have everyone write a similar word or the same energy. And it's like that's one of those you can't make this shit up moments where you're just like
Yeah.
it's like literally universal validation saying, yes, that's aligned. Listen to
Mhm.
that because you can't make that shit up. So
Yeah.
don't ignore this message. It's here for you and it's here for all of you. And you all got it in your own unique way and you all got to the same answer, so to speak,
Yeah.
and I just think that's such a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And within our gifts, I feel like that's where we sprinkle in the layers of, well, and I got this layer and I got this layer and they gave me this layer and they showed me this layer. And then, I mean, in some ways we are, you know, learning how to speak a new language or uncode a code or um I mean for me it just comes down to like what feels aligned, what feels right. I mean when I think back to, my journey of just growing up like as a child into my teens, into my 20s, into my 30s, into my 40s, now into my 50s, it's like I had a different relationship with a lot of different things and I was adamantly convinced that I was right at certain ages, right? And what
Yes.
I've learned over time is
Yeah.
that I could be wrong about absolutely everything that I think I know.
Yeah.
And I get to show up in a way that feels aligned and truthful and connected and divine each and every day. And if I'm showing up in that way from a place of kindness and love and compassion, that doesn't mean there's not also pain and despair and frustration. It doesn't mean that those go away, but I'm just saying if I'm showing up aligned to me, my human experience that's braided with the divine, then I can't I can't expect anything more of myself. And
Mhm.
that feels very aligned to me. I could go back and listen to this podcast 5 years and go, what the hell were we talking about? That makes no sense at all. Like we're just like, no, you know? Or
Mhm.
it could be like, oh my God, that's the key to unlock whatever we're going, wherever we're at that point. I don't
Yeah.
know, but I'm open to everything being different.
Yes. I so relate to that. And I've been having that conversation over and over with so many people. It's just like, I know that I don't know. All I can do is tune in and feel into what feels right or what feels right next or what feels right now. But it really, like I was saying before, it's like, I don't want to even teach people anything because it's not even about that. It's not about that at all. But I have nothing to teach people. Not that I can't be helpful to people in different ways, but it's just such a different way to engage with our wisdom in this moment to be like, I have no idea.
Yeah. Well, and it's one of those things where it's like with words, right? Like I feel like being an inspiration and
Yeah.
offering an invitation is being a teacher.
Hmm.
Like it is.
The
But I
paradox.
understand what you're saying. Exactly. I understand what you're
Yeah.
saying about like the definition of the word. Like you don't want to be at a podium in front of a room teaching them like structure.
And
And
yet,
also, yeah,
and
and
yet
also,
I'm literally going to be doing that. Like, it's so funny because I'm doing a little psychic fair circuit this fall, kind of traveling around and doing a bunch of fairs. And I had this vision of myself giving lectures at these psychic fairs. So I applied to be a speaker at like three of them.
nice.
And I'm going to be a speaker at an online conference as well. And it's so funny because as I'm feeling into like, like, how do I want this to feel for them? What do I want it to? And more than anything, I just want to validate everybody's path and specifically speak to the people who don't feel psychic and
Yeah.
not even teach them do this meditation, do this, like do these things to activate your gifts, but more so highlight a different way to engage with the idea of what it means to be psychic. Yeah. And it's like everything is a paradox, like because meditation is so helpful and those tools are so helpful. Like I just am so enmeshed in paradox. And I think that is in a way, that's the third thing that the Akashic Masters were talking about is like honing in on the paradox is that third thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, and.
Always.
Yes, and. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. You look like you're getting another message.
They just want to, when we're done with the conversation, the masters want to do a little energy work for the listeners as well. So whenever it's
Beautiful.
time for that, they want to do that.
Does it feel like it's time? I feel like we,
Is there any other questions you have about
oh
this
gosh.
that would help anybody
Oh, I
on
might
their
be a
journey?
terrible person to ask because I'm kind of familiar and comfortable in this world. I feel like if our listeners have comments and they want to comment, on the episode or send an email, we can
Mm-hmm.
definitely circle back to questions. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that might be a lovely invitation.
Is
Um,
that?
yeah. I feel like conversations like this are helpful for people to, I don't know, explore and play. That's just where I keep coming back to is like creativity, play, exploration are maybe more gentle entry points in that there's not a specific structure within it. There's no requirements, there's no expectations. It simply is you get to be, wherever it feels aligned for you and then explore that without seeking for a very specific outcome. I
Yeah.
think it's that exploration, that play, that creativity
Mhm. Mhm.
takes us to new places, even when we don't think it might be happening. I've just been my experience along my journey is just like, wow, I had no idea that me choosing to do that one little thing that I thought was so silly or stupid actually turned into like, holy shit, how did I get here?
Yeah. And that honestly, coming back to our first episode about that golden thread I was talking about, like leading me, it is so wild right now how I feel so in tune with that. Like, because of this one decision, this, and this, and this, and it is being validated all around me. Like, my friend bought a session for only because I started working with a coach and I've been posting regularly. And then that caused my friend to buy an Akashic session for this person who was a guide to her in India. And he referred somebody who met him in Thailand. And this person happens to have a large following on YouTube and made a video about it. And currently, tomorrow, I have a session with a person in Thailand who does not speak English, and I'm coordinating with an interpreter. And I've just been getting these like random people booking And that's
Amazing.
just like, I would have never dreamed that I'm working with an interpreter to read somebody's soul. Um, on
That's
the other
amazing.
side of the world. Like,
Yeah.
what just following the clues. And I guess I just feel called because I think it's helpful to share just a tiny bit about my journey into this self-identity of psychic, because I think so many people have a deep desire to be more in tune with their psychic gifts, but feel like maybe like I don't have it. I don't have, like, I think I would know if I had it by now. And I just want to say, if that is you, that was me.
Me
And
too.
that,
I was
yes,
also that human.
where you're like, there's no way,
Yeah, there's
like, I
no
don't
way.
have it. I can, and that's so funny because the whole time I had been doing like fairy, like tarot readings, since like 2010. And then in 2021, I made the decision that I wanted to enhance my psychic gifts because it was such a long process to get there. That's like 11 years. But I quit drinking. And all I did was, and that led to finding the Akashic Records, which led to me putting out donation. Like, I'm doing a new modality, come get a donation reading. And I gave 28 readings in a week. And um got enough validation to be like, oh, this is
Yeah.
real, real. This is real, real. Um, and that's when I discovered that I, could do mediumship when people's loved ones would come forward. And I was pre-recording something, and I was like, I don't know if your dad is dead, but it seems like this is your dad. And he has this message. And then waiting to be like, oh my gosh, I hope
Yeah.
that this person's dad is that, not like, like, I hope I like didn't just be like, but I think the energy was right from like, I'm just sharing this. I don't know if this is true, but I don't know.
Yeah.
And then waiting for that validation to come in. Yeah. And I just like want to say that it gets to be a long journey. It takes the time it takes for every single person. And it mostly just takes somebody believing in us.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that has been like the biggest shifts for me, were the moments where somebody was like, what do you think? I believe it, and like, and really genuinely, I just want your input, your intuitive input on this. And you're like, huh, never thought about that. Like, yeah. And so having somebody to believe in you and to come to you and ask you to tune in is such a beautiful example of like trust being
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
reflected back to you.
Yes. Yeah. And it's funny, that feeling for me has never gone away. I always feel incredibly grateful, and I don't know if honored is the right word, but it's just where I'm just like, wow, I don't take it lightly.
Yeah.
It feels amazing, and like it's important to show up authentically when those opportunities happen. And
Yeah.
sometimes they happen unexpectedly, and maybe you don't think you're in a place where you're there, but then all of a sudden your guides are like, "Oh yeah, you're doing this." I was like, "Wait, what?" You know? uh,
Literally. I remember, this is very recently, that this happened without, so I open the records and that's when I'll do mediumship things and have things come through. But semi recently, this happened like a few months back, maybe, without me trying. And I was just at work and I was talking to this man, and it was like this tunnel vision. And he was talking about trucking and how he was like in this, in the club, and just stopped in from trucking. And I just, it was so loud and so just like tunnel. And I was like, his dad is here. It's a family business. His dad did trucking, and there's people in the family named after him. And I just like, and then I was like, interesting. That was very, very clear. And I don't know this stranger,
yeah.
but anyways, so then I just like slowly brought it up, and I was like, oh, is it a family business? He was like, oh yeah, my dad died in 2010 and he did that too. And then eventually after a little while, he went to the bathroom and I talked to the manager. I was like, oh my gosh, this crazy thing is happening. I'm going to ask him if there's anybody in his family named after him, his dad. And then I was like, okay, is there? And he's like, oh, well, like my middle name is after my dad. My brother's middle name is after my dad. And my grandson's named after my dad. I was like, okay. It just
Yeah.
sometimes spirit is like in the most random places. And it's like, okay, just letting you know he's here. He's connected to you guys through your namesake. And, that's all. I guess that
Yeah.
was being asked of me. And just saying yes to those moments of destiny.
Yeah. Awesome. This has been amazing. I so appreciate you saying yes to being on the podcast. It was
Yeah.
lovely to reconnect with you again. I have a feeling we'll be doing this again if you're open to it.
So open to
You
it.
mentioned that the Akashic Records masters wanted to do some work. Is this something we do like in real time on the mic?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's do it.
And
Are you
then,
ready?
yes, absolutely. And so I'll just say that the masters of the Akashic Records are very adamant about consent. And so I'll just ask that if you wish to receive this energy, whatever it is, I never know what they're going to do. I simply observe what they're doing and narrate it. And in doing so, I'm an anchor for their energy to reach into the physical plane. And so I always ask everybody to be an active participant who is open to receiving this energy. So if you get into a comfortable space where you can lean back, if you're driving, wait, pause and do this later. As time is really no effect of whenever you're listening to this is the time that you're receiving this. And so if you can close your eyes, take a deep breath and let all the air out. And then if it is okay for the masters of the Akashic Records to offer you healing energy, energetic and cellular upgrades, and make new neural connections, you can physically just say yes.
Yes.
And so first thing that they're doing is I'm seeing them light up both the brain with vitality, and then I'm seeing them activating behind the eyes. And specifically I'm seeing color and rainbow. And they're just telling me about the way our human eye only perceives a little bit of the world. And so as to the capacity that you're able to integrate this, they are awakening a new level of sight for you, spiritual sight, to be able to see more of the spectrum of what exists. And then moving into the ears. And I just see them clearing out this pathway connecting to the ears. And they're just saying, for those of you who have the capacity to hear already, we're amplifying this process for you and turning up the dial of what you're able to perceive. For those of you new to awakening this clairaudient gift, we now open up the beginnings, which are the subtle tones and intonations that attune you to higher frequencies of perception. then moving into the heart space. And I see them clearing out some of like the debris and the heaviness that keeps us from facing our truth and from accepting our truth. Heart expansion. And resetting the electromagnetic field generated from your heart. And amplifying the auric field from the space of the heart. And I see them moving into the bottoms of the feet and saying some of you really need grounding and have become addicted to these higher frequencies in your body. And you're being asked to ground this energy in order to utilize this elevated frequency towards your purpose. And so we see them activating the chakras in the bottom of the feet. And I'm just seeing that as this is happening, some of you may feel waves of emotions, of grief, and this heaviness that you haven't had space to process. And there is now space to process it in a different way. And just trust that if there's any waves of emotions coming up as you ground this energy, that it is meant to be cleared through you. And from that space of grounding, I sense energy snaking its way up your spine. Again, to your capacity of integration, energy is rising until it reaches the peak in the third eye. Channels are now open and cleared to receive psychic information and to receive a direct connection to us. You are now attuned to these Akashic frequencies. Our wish for you is to integrate them into your life and to invite us to work with you in whatever way you feel called. Each of you has a unique offering into this world, and we're here to support that for the highest evolution and the highest timeline on this planet, inside of humanity, and for all of existence. And the work you're doing here on Earth is so important. It has ripples out into not only space and everything connected to you, but also interdimensionally as well. And that this is a reciprocal exchange. And take a deep breath and feel that integrating. And you can kind of take your time to just get back into your body, get into the space of where you are. And we'd like to thank the masters of the Akashic Records for their energy healing, for their information and wisdom and connection. The records are now closed. Amen. Records are now closed. Amen. Records are now closed. Amen.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And thank you to the Akashic Masters as well. Awesome. I feel
Yeah.
like that is the perfect way to end this podcast.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate you so much. They can find you at the Paradox Witch, is that right?
Mhm.
Okay. All right. I'm feeling pretty energetically great right now. So I'm gonna go enjoy that.
Yay. Okay. Thank
All
you.
right. Bye. 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 Be you every day.